Great, and welcome to the TAD Summit Innovators. And we're going to be hearing from Mike and Tim from Stecurity. So guys, straight over to you. Please introduce yourselves and introduce what Stecurity is getting up to.
Right, thanks very much, Alan. It's great to join the podcast. So I'm Mike. I'm one of the founders of Stecurity, and that way is Tim.
Not on my screen, but that's fine. Yes, I'm Tim. Work with Mike on Stecurity, and the place we normally kind of start in terms of telling the story is your story, Mike, and kind of what led you to kind of the idea of the crazy idea of building a programmable network. So maybe is that a place to start?
Yeah. You've let the cat out of the bag already, Tim, haven't you? Effectively, yeah. So when I worked in a mobile operator, I was really frustrated by the fact that customers kept bringing what I thought were really reasonable requirements, and the operators were always having to say no. And it was quite surprising at first, but then I realized the reason for that, in our belief, was that mobile core networks are built to provide services to consumers. They're not really built as a platform for innovators, in our view. So they're very locked down, they're very protected. And in our view, data deserves CPaaS too. It's not just about voice and messaging.
Yeah.
Particularly with cellular data now being underpinning most of what we now call IoT, or what we used to call IoT, and being sort of the fabric of society. It deserves a bit more democratization. Our view was developers and innovators need to be able to control and muster the capabilities that are in the mobile network in the same way as they can muster infrastructure in public cloud and the hyperscalers. So our mission really is to open up the mobile core network to allow developers and innovators to configure it and to slice it and build it and wrestle it into shape. Because if you've got a wearable, your requirements are very different than if you've got a fire alarm or if you've got a tracking device. Requirements in terms of security, behavior, performance, are all entirely different. And up until we came along, the mobile network was a bit of a dumb pipe, and our mission is to make that smarter.
Cool.
Excellent. Is that the right marketing answer, Tim?
Sounds absolutely brilliant. Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is kind of more from my personal perspective, really. So my kind of personal journey in telecoms, started off on the MVNO side, proposition, always kind of I have been outed as the marketing guy, more kind of propositions and pricing. I suppose my kind of, or the kind of the meeting of minds that Mike and I had several years ago now was I'd had so many experiences kind of, working in MVNOs, obviously reliant on operators or working within operators as well, of being frustrated again on behalf of the customer. Having come up with a really interesting idea that was, meeting their needs in some way, and then hitting a blocker, which quite often was process, but also sometimes was technology. And so on the process side, a lot of that is just obvious. The kind of, the bigger telcos are great and have been great at delivering secure, standardized services globally.
Yeah.
They're not great at responding to the needs of smaller businesses or to more bespoke requirements. And sometimes that's where the most interesting things are really happening. I say my personal experience trying to innovate on behalf of customers, I came up against the same roadblocks as an internal customer. So let alone what it's like for the external customer trying to do something. Woe betide a customer not having, 24 months of minimum commitments that they're prepared to put on the table. So that's some of those kind of ideas of really trying to disrupt in a positive way, are kind of what Mike and I, talked about now a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So, I mean, you mentioned Slice a few times now. So is this something that you're reusing or reselling the telcos slices, or are you just treating, again, the telcos a dumb pipe and you're over your network building that infrastructure?
Yeah, it's probably a tricky term, really, Slice, isn't it? Because when we talk to mention the S word among telco guys, they think about 5G RAN slicing and slicing right the way through.
Yeah.
And obviously, when that concept came about, there was lots of talk about, well, this is going to be great because as an enterprise, you're going to be able to take your piece of the mobile network world and use it for your own needs. But in reality, I think that's still quite a long way out of reach for the majority of use cases. And it only works in 5G. So it's the S word is a tricky one. what we've started from is the concept of, if you go into AWS, if you're a developer, you're used to going into AWS 2 o'clock in the morning, halfway through your pizza, add new VPC, virtual private cloud. You can just do that. 30 seconds later, it's ready.
Yeah.
You can then spin up virtual machines, which you're going to use for 5 minutes or 5 years. You can do all that self-service. So we started in our platform. We've got this concept we call a vSlice.
Gotcha.
And a vSlice is something that you can create on the mobile network on demand. But it's not a slice on the RAN. It's a slice which is for a particular application, which is isolated from other applications. So the example we use when we're pitching to customers is if you're the organizer of a music festival, say, or music festivals, and we have some great ones in the UK, Glastonbury, Latitude, etc., then you might want to create a slice for each event where you can define the IP addressing, you can keep it isolated, you can control the life cycle of SIMs. In our model, you say new vSlice, click save, and away you go. It's as if you've got like a private mobile network, but running on top of the mobile macro.
Existing. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Understood. Now, between your cloud infrastructure and the device, is it just generic sort of roaming data, or are you operating a VPN, or how's that extended RAN, if you want? What does that look like?
Yeah. Okay. So what we've got is that all the mobile network operators connect to this thing called IPX. It's an international network, IP based. It's a bit like a parallel universe to the internet, if you like.
Yeah.
So it's entirely separate to the internet. It's pseudo private.
Yeah.
So to get attached to it, you have to go through an IPX provider. There's security requirements and constraints, and that's how the operators all talk to each other. So if you've got your AT&T SIM card and you're roaming in on France Telecom, the traffic's getting back over IPX. So what we do is we've connected our core network to IPX directly. Because the brave pill that we took back a couple of years ago is we're not going to try and buy a core and build a layer on top. We're going to build a core from first principles from the first line of code.
Yeah.
We built all that, and that's plugged directly into IPX. Now, so the traffic comes from SIM over IPX, comes to our network, and at that point, the customer can control where it goes next. So it can go over the internet, or it can go direct to your VPC in AWS, or it can go over a VPN. It doesn't have to touch the internet at all. Because lots of the security considerations in IoT are actually about the eye. They're about the fact that the data is running over the internet.
Yeah.
And we believe that that's not always the best route to take.
Yep.
The internet's been great for connecting in a huge mesh any device to any other device, but in IoT, it's more likely you've got a large number of devices wanting to connect to a single application or a single backend.
Yeah.
And if that's in AWS or Azure, well, keep clear of the internet and you keep clear of a lot of the hassles.
Exactly. Well, that's an excellent point. Now, you are a sponsor of TEDHack and TED Summit, so thank you so much for supporting us. What are some of the things you're hoping to see from the hackers at TEDHack?
Well, I think that over the history of mobile, everyone has got used to the actual connectivity being a commodity.
Yeah.
Because and just being very dumb. I know there's lots of things which happen on the mobile network behind the scenes that don't get exposed to customers, and therefore you can't build any value around.
Yeah.
So things like, when a SIM is moving from tower to tower, the network knows about that. And if you change the SIM from one device to another device, take it out of your tracker and put it in your iPhone, the network knows about that. So it's going to be great to see people building things which respond to those events and actually taking advantage of all this hidden gold dust, if you like, which is there on the network, but no one can really touch. So that's number one. And the second is almost the other way around. If that's about observability, the other is about control. Now, there's loads of decisions that the mobile networks make on behalf of the customer without asking them. And normally that's fine. So can you attach to that network? Can I have a new data session? How fast do you want this data session to go? And we're exposing all those events too. So then the developer can decide how fast that session should be. which network should they be allowed to touch on. So it'd be great to see some of the participants getting some value out of that too.
Gotcha.
Because that's really that's the reason we built it.
Yep. Yep.
And it's difficult. Maybe it's difficult here as it is from our sales efforts, in that people just, there's unknown unknowns. People don't know that stuff even exists. So therefore they're not used to actually taking advantage of it. So hopefully that's what we want to see here.
Perfect.
Just to add to that, to give you a break as well, Mike, I think from the marketing side, that's really what we're hoping to see, Alan, is kind of people who are engaging in what we believe, is a really differentiated, feature-rich platform, exploring it, and then creating those great case studies, which then will help educate, others about the capabilities of what we've built, but also educate us as well, actually, about the language that's used and where users see the value in what we've done.
Mm-hmm.
And also hopefully tell us some things that we haven't yet done that we should do. So I think it's about the start. It feels a bit crazy to say it's the start of a journey, because we've been now doing this for some time, but it is. Yeah. We are at that stage in terms of direct engagement with developer end users. I think we are at that stage of really kind of wanting to kind of engage and listen and learn and champion what people can do with what we've created.
Cool.
Well, I was thinking to before. I mean, obviously, CAD Summit last year in Avera was great. I mean, the salsa dancing wasn't so great, but the event was brilliant. And I remember standing up there in front of the guys and saying, right, guys, this is our dream. We're going to build a programmable mobile network that does A, B, and C. It's going to work anywhere in the world. It's going to give all these capabilities. And we got loads of feedback from people saying, that's great, guys. Good luck with that. So I'm actually quite proud to come back a year later and say, guess what? Here it is. And we'll have it there. We can show people. And hopefully that starts to bring some of these things to life, and we'll start to get those creative juices flowing, not just for this year, but going forward.
Exactly. Because you've built your core, and it basically connects through IPX to any of your roaming SIMs anywhere in the world. And boy, are your SIMs getting distributed around the world? Well, customs declarations and payments pending, but we'll get there. We still have 2 weeks. I'm not that worried.
We'll get there. We will get there.
But I think that's the key, is you've now, because of how you've built this infrastructure, enabled developers to finally have observability and control that no telco has ever exposed. It's always been highly constrained. It's like, here's a SIM, give us your money, thank you and goodbye. It was like, let the internet manage everything else. So
but an interesting observation there is that I feel that's been quite limited to mobile, because you think about wide area networking and aspects like that. I mean, software-defined networks, the likes of what Equinix do with their Fabric proposition, and some of these things, they do a really good job. You can light up ports in any data center, then you can click and route data around. True. But that hasn't made its way to mobile.
Correct.
And so that's that's what we're trying to do. Software-defined mobile is effectively another way you could describe what we're building.
Which is very interesting, because that brings me to another question. Because one of my hobby horses is camera and how broken it is, because it's all dynamic. You have to do it like this. And it's like, guys, when you look at the fixed guys, you can just provision it. You can, if you want a fat pipe, you just provision it. You don't need to have it on demand. So, software-defined networking, it's, back to your observability and control. As a developer, I can just enable it. I don't have to go through this API and all these fees and all these capabilities to be able to enable it. So I'm really interested in your view on, are the camera APIs relevant, or do you see this more as a management issue, very similar to how the data center guys solve it?
I think maybe I've got a bit of an unpopular opinion about some of those things, because I think that maybe even 10 years ago, to bring different sectors together and allow them to integrate, it required very tightly defined standards and interfaces, because otherwise there was just too much manual work involved. In my view, integration and lightweight integration between systems has become so easy because of the tooling that give people great tools and a lightweight API. And it doesn't matter if the APIs from the various vendors are different.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, if those vendors have got different capabilities, and of course, we all want to have different capabilities. Who wants to be standard when it comes to composition?
Yeah,
Our view is better use technology. You know, JSON, Kafka. You know, platforms the IT guys already love and know well, and let them integrate rather than say this is the specification. It's a bit like some of the TMF stuff. Really impressive in terms of scope, but pretty impenetrable, and it all and generates a lot of work in trying to be standard, more work than would be involved if it was non-standard and it was just accessible.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you there. So for Johnny's benefit, maybe you could provide a little bit of background in terms of where you are in development as a company and what you're looking to achieve.
I want to ask a question just so I can have you guys make fun of my accent. Because I
make fun of ours.
There's three. It's a 3-on-1 here. I've lost on that one. I've got 3. I've got a couple of questions, just from new to the game here with TAD Summit the last few months. Number one, I appreciate you guys supporting Alan and TAD because it's the most important organization in the industry from my standpoint. Yeah. One question when you brought up in the beginning of the conversation how since we got here, so what you guys are doing, from my understanding, is it's unique. You're kind of the only ones that are looking to do what you're doing, and is that a fair assessment from my initial?
I don't think we're the only people trying to do it, but we're the only people approaching it in this way. There are, as I said, there are vendors they've bought a standard off-the-shelf core network. They've tried to put a layer on the top to expose it, but it's still constrained by what that core network was designed to do when it was conceived. So there are very few organizations who've taken the big brave pill, if you like, and built the core network from the ground up. And that's what I wanted to do, because we didn't want to be constrained by anybody else, frankly. Developers like to be control freaks. We like to be able to touch and change everything. We can't do that the way that the traditional approach.
And what are your challenges to go to market with this? I mean, you have to deal with the AT&Ts, the BTs, those type of people.
It's been. I mean, that really comes back to Alan's question, doesn't it, about our journey so far? So, in a way, this whole crazy adventure came about as a lockdown project to start with. So I came out of work. I sold my previous business to a mobile operator. Discovered what life in a mobile operator was like. 3 years to the day. Funnily enough, I moved on and decided, right, I'm going to take a break. Walked out into the sunshine, December 2019. COVID came along. All my round the world plans went out the window. So I thought, right, I'm going to have a go, get back to my roots and do some coding again. So I thought, as a lockdown project, let's try and build out a mobile core network from the ground up with people like me in mind as a customer. So I did that at first as a bit of a hobby project. And then Tim and I were having a beer on Teams, or no, Zoom it was at the time, where we were all having our Zoom-based beers in lockdown. Tim said, well, this will be great. This has been built in response to customer requirements. There's a business to be had here. And I thought, well, that's a great idea, Tim, but for that to work, you have to be able to work anywhere in the world. We need to find a mobile operator who's frankly courageous enough to allow us to share their roaming footprint without sharing their core network. And luckily, there's a few operators we'd worked with in the past, and one of those was up for the challenge. So we plugged into them. We got an IMSI range from them, so we can issue our own SIM cards that will roam anywhere they have footprint. They have footprint on 600 networks worldwide, and that made it practical. We then got something which was demonstrable, which allowed us to then raise some funding. We used that funding to build this out to a production scale, get to the point where we can start actually serving customers. That's now allowed us to successfully close another funding round where we've recruited the commercial team. And as we're starting to now grow out further, we're looking to integrate into other operators too. So there's no secret, our first roaming operator was Jersey Telecom. Small operator, but punched well above their weight in terms of roadmap and agility. That's been great to get us this far. We now need to expand that. We'll continue to work with Jersey, but we need to expand that with other operators. And we're getting calls not calls these days, are they? But emails and approaches from some really big names, some big M&Os who've seen what we're doing and are saying, look, trying to get this stuff internally is really, really difficult. It's a big project. Can you guys give us these capabilities for our subscribers or our partners? And because of the way our integration works, yes, we can very, very quickly. So we're not looking to compete, with the AT&Ts or the Verizons or the Deutsche Telecoms, whoever it might be. We're looking, because we're not trying to make money out of connectivity. They're welcome to the connectivity margins, what's left of them. We're a SaaS business, we're a royalty-based SaaS business where we charge an amount per SIM for our software every month. And it's win-win. It opens up new segments for the operators, new revenues for us. So that's the plan. Sounds great in theory.
And also, just if I can just jump in on that, again, that's supplementing what you're saying, Mike. And also back to your point about competition. I think, we kind of, we combine a sense of being really ambitious, but also we're quite humble, really. I think we understand this is a mature industry. It's a very busy ecosystem. There's lots of people in this value chain. And particularly at the moment, what we've seen, I'm sure you've witnessed the same thing over the last couple of years, is a real consolidation in that connectivity management layer. Because the hype around IoT, was hype, the profitability that people were hoping to achieve isn't there. But that's where kind of, we believe, because Mike and the development team have done such a brilliant job of architecting our platform, and it's all our IP, and it's very kind of agile as a solution, then we can make IoT connectivity profitable in a way that others can't, because we just haven't got the legacy, and we can create commercial models which are suited to the needs of our partners. And again, Mike mentioned the operators, the other kind of people that we see as partners, and where we're having a number of really interesting conversations, are the MVNOs themselves, who may or may not have a core network. They won't have the capabilities that we have, real-time control per IMSI of all the data routing and security and everything that Mike's kind of talked about. And that's where, again, as he was just talking about, as a SaaS provider, charging a very thin kind of royalty or license fee per active IMSI, we think we can really add value in with those partners. So we've got to find out kind of, in the jigsaw puzzle of connectivity provisioning, we've got to work out where we plug in, but that's the journey we're on.
Cool. No, that's really interesting. Johnny, you were in the middle of asking questions.
Yeah, no, I look, one of the reasons why I joined Alan and got involved with him a few months ago was really about bringing capital to innovation, not bringing innovation capital. I think that's the biggest mistake. You go to all these events, you go to shows, and you see these great technology, and they're all talking to each other, innovators, and they're all like, wow, this is great. But then again, when they go outside of that room, and then they go to VCs or private equity, it becomes a whole new game again. So I think one of the reasons why what we're trying to do here with TAD going forward and potentially bringing it to New York is really bringing capital to guys like you. Obviously, you guys have funded it already. You're probably going into your second round. But I think one of the things that I've been talking to Alan about is what I like about the TAD community is everybody helping each other. And for people, you go to these different shows and they're smiling, but then knifing each other all day long. And it's really, I've been around a little bit too long. And I was involved with the all wireless and prepaid because I come from the prepaid industry, which has now become the all wireless, which is all MVNOs in the USA. So I know that market, quite well. Your challenges as far as raising capital are, have you found them as far as, dropping your valuation, or are you in a standpoint right now where you got people coming to you and trying to get in? Where are you at as far as like people know about you, they don't know about you, or you're going to family, you're going to guys that have backed you before and successful exits, or where are you in that journey?
That's a great question. A really interesting point in our journey there. So far, we've been very lucky that all the funding we've taken has effectively been angels. And when I say angels, what I really mean here is that it's all smart money. We've turned money down. What we really have been really keen is to take money from people who know and breathe and understand the industry and the problems firsthand, who will bring us cash, but they'll also bring us support and contacts and connections and guidance and advice. So we have like an advisory group which sort of overlaps with our investors, and we've been very lucky to be very choosy about who those investors are. So far we've got no institutional money at all. It's all just individuals who've got us this far. But obviously we will need to accelerate, and the opportunity here is to accelerate. So our plans there is as soon as we're developing a good, robust, demonstrable, predictable gross margin, and it's about acceleration, then we'll go to the next step. But we'll have an even better story then to tell than we have now. So our valuation we had a very early founders round, and we've had 2 angel rounds, and in each round our valuation has stepped up materially, but it's still modest. The next round is a whole different ball game. The next round will be institutional money, because it'll be about, look, we've got something here where we can demonstrate market traction. There's clearly product market fit. We now want to accelerate and take on the world, and that'll be something we need to learn about. Now, our chairman, a guy called Chris Hall, is our chairman, and we chose him as our chairman, if you like, because he is raring to go on that, but he knows what he believes the milestones are that we need to have crossed to make those conversations go well. Does that make sense?
Are you going to be looking in the States for money, or
in the States?
Yeah.
Well, we want to take the same approach as you do with the individuals. Is if there's organizations and funds and there's money which will bring us acceleration and support as well as cash, then we don't really care where it comes from.
Yeah. No, we're looking at a project. Selfishly, I have a question. So one of my friends is looking at a project in the eSIM space.
Right.
And the lead investor in there was like one of the first investors in Microsoft. The guy was on the board, and really serious guy. So your attention right away is, hey, look, he's there. Like, not even knowing what they're doing. So do you see, dumb question again, because I'm not as smart as you three. Do you see eSIMs being in the middle of anything you guys are doing, or different? Because you mentioned SIMs a lot, and this is probably just a dumb question for me coming from
it's
prepaid and messaging.
No, but there's a really useful question about services. I mean, from our perspective, whether it's a physical, one of our plastic SIM cards, or whether it's an eSIM, we don't really care. And I don't mean I don't mean in a good or a bad way, but I think eSIM, we're not on the final chapter of the eSIM story. Obviously, it's progressed. The latest release, the SGP32 release of specification of eSIM, which the industry is just grappling with at the moment, is a huge step forward. But I don't think we're at the end there, because although eSIM brings opportunities, it also brings quite significant challenges for how you differentiate, because all of a sudden your customers have got even less reason to be loyal to an operator, because they can move it at any point. And so from our perspective, we're reminding them of the fact that when you use eSIM to switch from profile A to profile B, you're also switching from core network A to core network B. So if you've got capabilities which are provided in network A but not network B, then you suddenly lose them. So there is, from our perspective, we believe there's an opportunity to provide one consolidated core network behind multiple eSIM profiles, so that customers can use eSIM to switch profiles, to help with footprint, to maximize costs and margins, but at the same time not have any impact on their back-end systems, because at the moment there is a big impact. If you've got a private APN through operator A and you suddenly eSIM switch to operator B, if that APN no longer works. So there's some dark secrets in the cupboard for eSIM, and we want to address those too.
Yeah, I may give somebody your number that may want a little bit more. He actually probably pay you for the consulting on it, because he's looking to make a large investment. So, yeah, I mean, no, this is exciting. It's exciting stuff, Alan. And one more question. So, on the security side, like if you look, there's another show in telecom, and guy's name is Lee Scargill. He's on that other show, Comms Risk or whatever, and he's always, you listen to this guy, really bright guy, talking about all the, the stories of, people coming in, turning on people's cars and driving them, and the level of fraud that's happening there. and they make it sound like it's the end of the world. I mean, is it at that point?
But I think there is definitely there are definitely issues that need to be addressed. I mean, some of that's being picked up through regulation. So in Europe, things like the Cyber Resilience Act and responsibilities there to ensure, as a provider of an end-to-end IoT application, you take security properly and you can stand behind it. Is bringing it to the surface. Most of the industry, in our view, is trying to address that by addressing the device, which is really important, because the device is that thing which is up a lamppost, it's in a car, it's open to be messed with and meddled with. Our argument, like we said a little bit earlier on, is that the best way to avoid the internet risks is to avoid the internet. And if you've got a SIM card in your device and it's being used to unlock your car, there's really no justification for that traffic to touch the public network at all, because that's where people will try and compromise it. So our view is that the network itself and the connectivity has a really important part to play, but it's historically that's just not been possible because the operators haven't given delegated those capabilities to customers to control the data path.
So we're gonna have to draw a line there because we're way over time. But this has been excellent.
Alan.
No. It was
this.
This was a great discussion. I think this, high level began. I think everybody understands what you're doing and now sees all the threads of where you can expand and grow your business. So this was perfect for a podcast. So again, thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.